one of those sluggish games that didn't have an exciting ending because the Giants weren't ready to meet the moment. Washington wins 21-6. The New York offense struggled throughout the game. Russell Wilson completed only 17 of 37 passes for 168 yards. He added 44 yards on the ground. Good Lord, the Commanders outgained the Giants 432 to 231. The Giants are 0-1 for the 8th time in 9 seasons, and it is the 3rd straight year the Giants have failed to score a touchdown in their season opener. And Devin, for that reason, it was no surprise that after the game, when Brian Daboll, the coach of the Giants, was asked about the quarterback position, the door was open to a potential flip to Jaxson Dart. They supposedly had a package of plays ready to go. I think they're holding him back because they want to be sure he's ready. I think they already know he's the better option. And I said from the moment they drafted him, hang on. If you believe in this guy enough to trade back into round 1, and he can't beat out Russell Wilson at this stage of Russell Wilson's career, you've blown it by trading back into the bottom of round 1 to get Jaxson Dart, because that guy should walk in the door better than Russell Wilson, who had no takers, no suitors, and settled for $10.5 million guaranteed, which is peanuts at the quarterback position nowadays, on a 1-year deal with the Giants. If Jaxson Dart cannot beat him out, why in the hell did you draft Jaxson Dart in the first round?
But I think they do think he can play right now, but I think they're sitting there because of the landscape of the NFL. It's almost like Jaxson Dart is, whether it's just Brian Daboll or it's Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, however the Giants are seeing him as a package deal or one or maybe the other, this is the last move they have to make. Like once you put Jaxson Dart in, if the offense doesn't work, if the team's not better, you're done. So to me, hey, it's week 1. Russ didn't play great. Offensively, we didn't look good. The Commanders got pressure all day on Russell Wilson, even early in the game. The offensive line didn't look good. You sit there and you say, how many weeks can I pull this off until I have to pull the trigger? Because once I pull the trigger, there's no going back. So now you kind of look at your schedule and you say, how do we make sure we set this young player up for success? Is it putting him in the very next week against a Philadelphia defense? I'm not too sure about that. And I know everyone's always like, hey, don't hold back. Just let the guy go. But if Brian Daboll knew he had his job security, Jaxson Dart would have been the starter. And you just take the lumps and you just go and you try to coach him along the way. But the way this league works is once you put the young player in, if it doesn't look good right away, you're done. And even sometimes if it does look good, we saw with Gerard Mayo last year, they didn't put Drake May in to start. They went 4 games and they put him in. And it was like, wow, people like Drake May. There was some hope. And he still got the axe at the end of the year. So I think these coaches are trying to set themselves up to coach a Jaxson Dart the next year when it could be better. And I think that's the kind of the juggling system that they're trying to figure out. I think ultimately Jaxson Dart will be in there. I think these younger quarterbacks, when your offensive line isn't as good and you're trying to figure things out, the young quarterback that can run, that can make something happen, I think it inspires your offense. It gives it a little more juice. The older quarterbacks that are in there trying to figure this out in the offense, like they can't move anymore. They can't do different things. That the offense just looks stale. It doesn't produce anything. So I would expect to see Jaxson Dart in there. I just think they're trying to put him in there in the best situation possible for him to have success.
There is no good situation, though. That's the problem. See, I understand everything you are saying, and it is an accurate reflection of the way coaches think, because the coaches of the bad teams are also the coaches of the dysfunctional teams that make bad decisions, like we're going to bring back our coach and GM for 2025. We're going to let them draft a first-round quarterback, but we're not going to make sure they completely understand that they're guaranteed the opportunity to be around to get the most out of that quarterback. So it creates these strange incentives, these conflicts of interest where winning takes a back seat to how do I manage this roster? When do I go? How many wins do I need in the bank before I can put the rookie out there and we can lose some games, but he can take some lumps and the game can start to slow down. So be ready to go next year. And I've done enough so I get it next year. Those things shouldn't be in a coach's mind. And it's on the owner to create an atmosphere where the coach believes that all that needs to be done is what's right for the team in the interest of winning games and getting the quarterback ready. And I'm a firm believer. And again, oh, wow, well, the Eagles are coming up and this defense and that defense. If you don't think the guy is capable of holding his own against teams like that, don't draft him. And if you think your offensive line is in shambles and you're not going to be able to protect him, don't draft a quarterback. Sign a quarterback in free agency and use your first-round pick on offensive linemen. And I understand that it's easier said than done. This idea of the political game that gets played as to when we're going to switch to the rookie, just if he's better and if he's ready, go with him. Sims was livid about this when we were talking about it in the viewing room on Sunday. If they have a package of plays for Jaxson Dart, that means he's ready. This isn't some change of pace Trey Lance thing, right? Who else were they talking about putting in? Jalen Milroe, package of plays for him. A different guy to plan for. Stretch the resources of the defense thin so that both guys can succeed. No, this is just whether or not Jaxson Dart's ready to go. And I feel like institutionally they think he is. They just weren't ready to do it. Let's hear, before we say anything more about it, let's hear from Brian Daboll from yesterday about his decision on the starter for week 2.
You kind of left it hanging out there, so I think you have to start here. Do you intend to start Russell Wilson this week?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and after a game, it's an emotional game. It's a tough game. Didn't play particularly well, I would say, collectively. But in terms of making any of those decisions, really at any position or schematic changes, I'd like to, do it with a clear head and watch the tape. And again, like I said yesterday, that game just doesn't fall on Russell Wilson. You got to do a better job collectively, coaching, playing, but Russ will be the starter.
Yeah, and this is going to be a weekly question until the switch is made to Jaxson Dart. Complicating the situation and making it all just even more bizarre, this weird thing the Giants have about not letting their backup quarterback speak to the media in complete and total defiance of the league rule. And usually it's the player that doesn't want to talk and the team has to try to coax him to talk. This is one of the rare occasions that I can remember where the players are willing to talk to the media, but the team is like, no. And, this speaks, Devin, to the reality they're going to face if and when they bench Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson will activate his personal media and PR machine, and there will be all sorts of leaks. And I'm sorry, but we've seen it before. We know how this goes. When it started to go sideways in Seattle, there was a report that Russell Wilson wanted Pete Carroll fired. When it went sideways in Denver, there was the pushback on the whole issue of he was threatened if he didn't change his contract, he was going to be benched. If and when they bench Russell Wilson, there's going to be a phase 2 in the nation's biggest media market where Russell Wilson, not directly, but indirectly, is going to be getting his version out there. And I think at some level that's part of what they're trying to delay.
Yeah, and to go back to it's the Cowboys they play this week, not the Eagles. But I mean, to me, everything you said is true, but we're ignoring what it is. So if I'm Brian Daboll, maybe I wanted to take an offensive lineman. Maybe I wanted to trade up, but the owner comes in, like you said, and they say, I want to see the future drafted in this draft. So you get Abdul Carter, and then you have to go get a quarterback. So you do trade up into the first round. Now, I think for them, Jaxson Dart performed well in the preseason. Ultimately, what really matters is how he performed in training camp and joint practices, because that's more real football. The preseason is kind of what it is. So they have to make that determination if he's ready to go. So maybe you sit there, and for me, if I'm in that situation, I try to hold on and say, can Russ give me a game or two where he performs well and we steal a win? And then is there a game early in the season where he doesn't play well, where ultimately we do what we need to do as a team and he just doesn't play well? Because if you think back to even Atlanta last year with Michael Penix Jr., they talked about it, the way he threw the ball when he came in, players are like, damn, this guy. And I think there was a little bit of players that probably wanted to see Michael Penix Jr. out there. But Kirk Cousins had a couple games, threw for 500 yards against Tampa, did different things. But then ultimately when overall the interceptions, when he didn't perform well, and it showed up that, damn, this is Kirk Cousins not playing well, not our offense, not our team. I think that's when they made the change. And I think for Daboll, they're going to hold on and say, okay, Sunday, yeah, he didn't play well, but as a team, we didn't play well. Is there going to be missed throws? Are there going to be times when they come back and show him on film, the ball should be out of your hands. It should be to this guy. He's open. Those are the things I think they're trying to say. When we're going to bench a guy, we're going to make sure we're benching a guy because of his play. And I think ultimately everything that comes after that, they're not going to be able to stop that. They're going to just have to roll with that. But I think at this point in Russell Wilson's career, no matter what comes out once he gets benched, I don't think people are going to be like, oh, that's interesting. I think people are going to be like, yeah, whatever. They're not going to care because they're going to want to see Jaxson Dart in there. So I don't think that'll be as much of an issue for them as it was for Seattle and a little bit for Denver, because Denver gave them so much money that you do have to kind of answer those questions. I think for this time, I think people knew when Russell Wilson got there, he's here for a limited amount of time, but ultimately we don't want to see him for 17 games unless we're doing something that we never thought we'd be able to do as a Giants team this year.
But I do think at some level, and I'm not saying that this is the right approach, I'm just trying to understand why the Giants are doing what the Giants are doing, and dysfunctional teams do dysfunctional things, and the dysfunction for the Giants begins at the very top of the organization. And I'm sorry if the top of the organization doesn't like it. Stop being dysfunctional, and I'll stop saying it. But your point is very real about ownership putting their thumb on the scale and creating this weird situation. But I also think that part of what Daboll is saying, yeah, it is the total team effort. He's almost anticipating what the PR pushback will be if they bench Russell Wilson. And to your point, they shouldn't care about that. My point is they do. My point is they know. And my point is that this is part of what you get when you sign on for the Russell Wilson experience, because it's not going to be his fault if things don't go well. It's going to be the team stinks. And even though Giants fans will say, we don't care, we just want to see what Jaxson Dart can do, it's not going to stop the insiders and the reporters from going with whatever is handed to them by the PR machine, because it's going to make for an interesting story. Because Russell Wilson, sources say, this happened, that happened. Can you believe this? Can you believe that? They told me they weren't going to take a quarterback. Whatever it is, it's something that can go in a bunch of different directions, but it's something the Giants are going to have to worry about. And they're clearly concerned about something, or they'd be letting the backup quarterback speak to the media. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.